Alright, what we have here is the customer's Xbox One S controller, and we have stick drift on it. So I'm going to come here to gamepadtester.com, and as you can see, I'm not even touching the analog, and the analog is displaying that it's pushing upwards. So I also, anyway I move it, so down, now it's stuck in the down position. Seems like left and right are okay, but it's mostly just the up and the down that's causing it. So we're gonna go ahead and take this apart and replace the analog on the left hand side. First things first is the disassembly of the controller. It looks like the customer already attempted to open the controller, if not opened it himself. So one of the screws is missing here, but that's not really going to affect anything. We're going to go ahead and take our prying tool and just pop off the plastic pieces on the handle here. There's one on each side, and then there's screws underneath those. There's 4 screws in total, plus that one, which isn't there, would be 5 screws that you have to take apart to get the plastic off of these controllers. So let's go ahead and pop that off. Now that we got those off, we're going to unscrew it. Alright, now that we got those unscrewed, we're able to take the top panel off and the bottom. We're just going to go ahead and slide those off, and now we have access to the boards. And since we found out that it's the left stick that's doing it, it's going to be this board only. We don't have to take off the top board, only this board, which is 2 screws, and then we got to unsolder these connected points here. I went ahead and took the screws out, so I was interrupted. So there's a screw here, a screw here, so these little guys, and once you get those off, there is a little plug here. You just pull up, just move it out of the way. Now that you've done that, you're able to pull this board up as it's connected to the top board via a little plug-in, and of course the analog popped off there. It's better to take the analogs off before you pull it out, but that's what I'm good at doing, is just taking stuff apart. Okay, so now that we got that up, we are going to have to unsolder these connection points. Alright, so what we're going to do here is always remember what order these wires go in. So typically gray is going to be up front, black will be in back, red up front, black in back. So it'd be gray, black, red, black. However, sometimes this gray wire only has black, black and gray, but it would be different from the back wire, so it'd be black and gray. We're just going to go ahead and desolder these wires from the board, and they come off real easily. Maybe I may need to I may need to throw some flux on there, but looks like it came off fine. Red, and then black, of course. Alright, got that side off. Now we're just going to need to get this side Same thing. Gray. Black. Red. And then black again. Alright, now we're good to go ahead and set this board up on our little holder here. And we'll take that analog stick off. Now that we have the board set up on the board holder, which for me is the easiest way, we're going to go ahead and throw some flux on there. You always want to make sure that you're changing the right analog stick too, as I have changed the wrong analog stick as seen in one of my other videos of PS5 controllers. So now I test them right before I take them apart to make sure I take the right one off. Now we got some flux on there. We're gonna go ahead and add our leaded solder, which again melts at a lower temperature. And because of that, it'll make taking this analog off a lot easier. So it looks like these ones want to bridge together, which is perfectly fine. Now we've got our leaded solder on there. We're just gonna heat it up, and as we heat it up, we're just gonna pull from the bottom and see if we can get that off. Alright, we're gonna go ahead and heat this up. You wanna get yourself a pair of tweezers or pliers, anything like that, to be able to pull this off. There are multiple ways to take analog sticks off. This is the way that I choose to do it. However, if you're not careful doing it this way, you can damage something, or you can accidentally knock off certain components that you don't want to come off. But I've been doing it this way for quite some time, and it seems to be what works for me. Perfect. So we got that off, and it looks like it didn't even didn't even melt, so that's a pretty good removal if you ask me. And we're just gonna go ahead and tilt the board up. Now that it's tilted up, we're gonna heat it from the bottom, and we're gonna suck all the solder out of the top. some of the solder is stuck on there pretty good. Alright, so we did knock off a component there, but that's alright. So we'll just solder it back on. That's the only downfall of doing it this way, is it's easy to knock components off, but we're not worried about it. So we can just add some new solder. There, there, and there. All three of the feet. And just move that back over. I'm just going to go ahead and throw some flux on there real quick. And let's see. I'm just going to heat it up from the bottom and let it seat from the bottom. The flux should be able to take care of that. Let me straighten the board up here. Knocking components off isn't the end of the world. Just takes a little bit more time. The only time that knocking components off is really difficult is whenever you're in tight spaces or working on small areas on boards where there's really small components. Other than that, it's all pretty simple. Alright, so it looks like we have the solder melted. Let's see if it's stuck. Yep. Alright. So the component's back on there. Now we just need to get the new analog stick in, and then we'll solder it back on. Alright, I went ahead and put in the analog. It literally just slides in. You can slide it out, slide it back in, just like so. So this is actually a 1-for-1 match, so there's no disassembly of the analog that I have to do or anything like that. And because the removal was done with no issues. We'll just slide that bad boy on there and solder her down. If you accidentally melt the port that was on there and it leaves plastic residue, you can take that plastic residue off with something to scrape it with. I use a razor blade, but if you're not very experienced or careful with things such as razor blades, you can always use a plastic scraper or something of that sort. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put pressure on the analog as I solder these legs down. And that'll make sure that it's sitting perfectly flat, which is what we want. If it's not, then I will remove it and put a new one on. However, if you're doing this at home or wherever you are, it does not matter if it is perfectly straight on there, because it will still work. The only thing that'll be different is the analog will sit kind of sideways.
Alright, I'm gonna go to my office and write up some paperwork. Guess I'll see y'all tomorrow.
Alright.
I should say my home office. See ya.
So yeah. Alright, so we almost got solder on all of them. Just a couple more here. Alright, we have the new analog on here. There's the old analog on the right hand side, and this is the brand new one on the left hand side. Got it all soldered down. It's good to install and test. Alright, we're just gonna do the good old halfway assembly here, just to test and, oh, I guess I should probably solder these bad boys back on. So I'm gonna solder those on real quick. I already showed you how to unsolder them. You just solder them back on the same way you unsoldered them. And yeah, let me do that real quick, and then we'll put it back together temporarily. Now that we've got those soldered back on, we just need to connect the boards together. Don't forget to put this in. This is a headphone jack. Yeah, it doesn't really it doesn't like stick anywhere. It just kind of slides in here, and when you push the boards together, it's held together by the boards. So we're gonna go ahead and line those up and make sure that this little guy right here is out of the way. There's a little slit in the board that you can put it through, but we're just gonna push it out of the way for now so that we can plug these together. Perfect. And now that those are plugged together, we can plug this guy up. Sometimes I wish I had like smaller fingers or like really pointy fingers. There we go. Alright, we're just going to put those 2 screws in here and these little guys. We're going to put those in there and then we'll be able to test it. If I can get that screw in there, that is. Alright, so we got those screws in, and now we'll be able to test it. Basically what I'll do is I'll just plug it up, and because we know that the problem before was when we would move it down real quick or move it up real quick, it would basically freeze in that direction and keep going in that direction. Whenever you test these controllers though, and you keep the top frame off like this, and you don't use the analogs, what will happen is these can actually lock. So it'll lock down or it'll lock up. So you just gotta be careful whenever you're testing it, that if you want to test full range of motion, you're basically gonna have to put the analog on and then put the plate on top of it. But we're not doing that, we're just doing stick drift. So we're gonna go ahead and give that a test real quick. Alright, we have the controller plugged up, so what we're going to do is we're just going to move the analog stick a little bit in all directions. And it seems to be alright. It does look like it's leaning a little bit. It's not aligning perfectly in the middle. However, when we put the entire controller together, it may sit better versus where it's sitting at now. Yep, yeah, so it's sitting pretty good. Just has a slight lean, but that's okay. It's not going to be noticeable, and it's not going to keep drifting that way. It's just going to stay right there. So during gameplay, you won't even notice it. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put this back together. So I already put the bottom plastic on, but it just slides on. It's nothing fancy or anything like that. Nothing has been screwed down yet. Same with this. We need to put the analogs on first. Come on now. Alright, analog. And now we can put the cover on. And we're going to put those 4 screws back in. Always want to be careful when tightening these. If you're doing this at home, you might want to do it by hand. But once you've been doing this so long, like I have, then you kind of just know when to stop. So, but you don't want to torque the screws down or anything like that, because it will break the plastic. You just want to get it nice and secure where it pulls all the plastic pieces together. And once it does that, it's good to go. So we're going to go ahead and put it back together. And we'll go test it out on the actual Xbox to make sure that it's working like it should be. Alright. And there's how you change the analog out. Thanks for watching.